I feel like I have an interesting perspective here because we added we changed the terminology and saying generational cycles, but it did start generational curses. Right. And I like the generational cycle because it's more inclusive, right? Because it can be a positive cycle or it can be a negative. Right. And if we look at, my family history, technically my mother and my father are the first break in the chain, right? Meaning that leaves me with the responsibility of continuing, not to fall back into what they, broke, right? So I'm the second link in the chain link that they're creating. So I feel like that adds, obviously there's pressures being the first one to do it. Right. But when, you're the second one and you have to continue, something that is new or something that's just created, it's a different energy around it. And it comes with different things. But I am definitely grateful that, half the work has already been done. All that is up to me to do now is to listen and to execute.
Bless you.
And similar, Daya is working to be, a chain, a break in that link, right, towards the direction that she wants to go in. And I feel like that's a lot of work, right? And I'm glad that you have spaces where you can kind of share and get help with that. But for me personally, my focus has always been, how do I continue the break that my parents already created?
Right.
Right.
And it's just it's a lot.
You know what it is. And y'all know. Jayla don't get scientific. I got my contacts on today. I didn't bring my glasses, but I'm still taking to the science.
Lay that knowledge on you.
Right? There's this concept of epigenetics, right? And it's the study of irritable changes in gene expression, right? And basically what it tracks specifically is honestly how behaviors and environment change your gene expression, right? So a change in phenotype without a change in genotype changes the way that your cells read your genes, right? Meaning that with enough trauma, right, with enough repeated behavior, it can literally be written in your DNA.
Exactly.
So if you come from a long line of people living in poverty who have, a certain mindset, it can almost become genetic for you to think and feel a certain way.
Right.
And we see it a lot with Black people. Yes. And we question, like, why do I feel this way? I shouldn't be feeling this way. Where is this coming from? And, it reminds me of the podcast that we did about, having that relationship with your parents, because you need to know some of these things. You need to know who you're descended from, so it makes sense, because epigenetics is a real...
Right.
It's a real thing. And you
real.
Have
it's impactful.
Because otherwise you're going to drive yourself crazy trying to figure out what's wrong with you, and there's nothing wrong with you. It has been written in your genes.
Right.
So with that,
it's like sometimes I can't go.
And add on, but no, you're partly correct in what you're saying, that it does have a connection to slavery, right? And in slavery, what we saw is that for the male slaves, right, they would strip the mind and leave the body, right? Taught to, not know how to think for themselves, just physically do. Versus this forced the female slave, who was still procreating and having babies, and she had motherly instincts, to take on what traditionally is known as a male role, but without a support system. Now you're doing everything. That's that Kate mentality, that superwoman mentality. So you are probably correct in saying that it dates back to slavery. And I think to kind of blow it up, right? Because we are Black and we experience that. But I feel like we can blow this thing up to encompass many people. Because think about it like this, right? If you are a descendant, right, from a long line of slave masters, which then turned into capitalists, or which then turned to colonizers, to slave masters, to imperialists, to capitalists, right? On the other end, right? Because we were, some of our ancestors were slaves. What about the descendants of the masters, right? Is there something even written in their genetics that, those same things that we're talking about that could be written in our DNA? I feel like that could go for anybody, for both parties of the situation.
Yeah, I think it's just really tough.
Okay. And also with that, if it's ingrained in our DNA, how can we really move away from it and change it if it's ingrained, and it's going to be ingrained in our kids' DNA.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna get into all of this, right? Okay. The conscious mind is right. It's our front brain.
Yes.
Technically, this is what we know, what we have learned. This is more of nurture, in my opinion, than nature. The unconscious mind or the subconscious, right, which is like the back brain,
The unawareness.
right? That's literally. In my opinion, it's nature. It's instinct, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, we have physical instincts and stuff like that. But when you grow up, you are taught certain things, right? You are taught how to react to certain things. You are taught. There's so much that is learned
Right.
that the unconscious it basically goes unused. So what we see a lot of times, like when people go to therapy to understand, like, oh, I'm doing this, but I feel this way. And they can't put a name or a word to the way they're feeling, is because most of it lives in their unconscious, in their subconscious. How we talk about there's stuff going on mentally, there's things registering mentally, and you don't even know that it's happening.
Yeah.
That's the unconscious,
Right.
The subconscious.
Is there a way to like say that you have a problem with like your subconscious? Is there a way to like get that treated since you can't really control it?
Right, and that's one of
yeah.
when she brings up shadow work, that's what she means. There are ways to tap into what you feel subconsciously, and it's seen through actions, right? You can say, that's why people say actions speak louder than words. It's because you could say things all day that come from your front brain, but typically what you do, like action, like your physical, what you do is connected to your subconscious.
Yeah.
So doing things like shadow work and unlocking the real reasons behind some of the things you do, and making that to a marriage with what you have been trained to think and trained to do, it allows you to kind of defeat some of these genetic makeups,
cycles.
Because it's unconscious shadow that you guys are talking about. We have actions that we have been doing, or we have actions that were they either passed down to us or were they learned when we were younger?
Let me give an example, like to make it like better, right? Yeah. So let's say you wanted to go to a party, right? And your mom says that she could take you, and then you downstairs, you like we finna get lit at the
We
kickback.
better get litty like a kid.
Ooh, what?
Anyway, it's lit. You ready, right? She comes in and she's like, I can't take you anymore, right?
Explanation.
Now, you might have been trained as a person, especially, dealing with like people pleasers and things like that. And your front brain to be like, okay, that's fine, right?
Yeah.
Some people are able to address that. No, that really made me feel like crap. But some aren't, right? I think all of us have a certain level of emotional intelligence that knows how we actually feel, how it actually made us feel. But for people who are literally lost in just moving every day, they lose, how do I actually feel about this? And another example is for people who are influencers, so where everything you do is watch. You have to watch what you say. You have to watch your facial expressions. Celebrities, like if Beyonce was, they be zooming in on Beyonce so hard at the BET. Of it, like, what is her reaction? So she literally always has to be cognizant of what she's doing. At some point, she is losing. Well, I'm not saying this is her situation specifically, but for some people, at some point, you lose how you actually feel. What is your actual reaction to some of these things because of what we are taught and what we are, what is deemed appropriate to do and what's not. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, like you said.
Can I provide a statistic? Okay, for the Black community, there's a 3% growth rate for poverty. Meaning that 97% of the time, if you were born in poverty, you stay in poverty, right? That's horrible. And like they said, it's emotional intelligence. But if all your life, and what's crazy? My dad, one of his favorite artists, Play a Fly. He's like, he's a older artist, underground, really. If you know underground Atlanta music, then you know. But should know, right? But he talks about this concept of ghetto eyes, and Sonata did a speech similar to this, stained glass eyes. It's like if you have only seen this amount of stuff, what you think is capable, what you think you're capable of, and knowledge and truth, is literally constricted to this much
all that
stuff.
you've seen.
So it becomes a generational cycle because nobody is venturing out. There is no new perspective being brought. The music you listen to talks about the same thing.
Exactly.
The movies you watch and the television shows, reality TV, everything.
Bro, did y'all hear her synthesis?
Yeah.
What'd you say?
That was
allegory of the cave.
that was good.
That's exactly
Oh
what
my
it
God,
is.
thank
That's
you
it.
guys.
Knowledge
Yes.
and truth becomes restricted to what you think you know, right? And you don't know what you don't know.
And I'm thinking with my previous question about asking when you said you just have to leave it unknown with the plays out of the cave, you can find that truth. Somebody finds that truth, and they try to bring her back to stop the curses from other family, to your siblings, to the people who you're related to, so that they can stop the trail. But they're not listening.
And that is literally why it makes me so
Yeah.
mad when we hear this conversation
Yes.
like, oh, whitewashed and this.
And it's
I
not.
love that there are so many different type of black people, and I hate that in the media and in movies and in films they make the black experience one thing, you know, the come up,
a monolith,
and all of that.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Literally.
Oh crap! What was I reading where they talk about it? It's trauma porn, basically,
Right.
with the black community. Like people literally love seeing black people
go through
the struggle, right? And the only way to really break these generational cycles is
addressing it.
This hole that I was talking about of everything that you see is opened, and it takes Sanai, who grew up different than Jonah, who grew up different than me, who grew up different than somebody who lives in Lakewood, who grew up different than somebody living in Sandy Springs, who went to PWIs all their life. If there is no expansion of community, it is we're never gonna break these cycles.
Right, and I think that
where we're gonna go from there.
But the thing about shadows is that shadows only work if there's light.
I agree, bro. I was literally going to say that. I don't like that. That's what it is. I like that.
Right.
Wait.
And I'm gonna tell you what I mean by that, right? Shadows. When do shadows appear? When it's dark and there's a flash of light, right? And so the flash of light here is that there's glimpses of hope.
Yeah.
There is glimpses of hope for, you know, for people who are trying to break those generational cycles. And we learn in psychology how Freud, he specifically talks about childhood and how much upbringing plays a role into personality development, right? It's 5 stages. I'm not gonna get into the stages. Yeah. But it's important. I wanted to bring it up here because that shadow is it's just what's a word for it's a composition of many different elements that either did not have time to finish. We in a past podcast we talked about emotional stunting. Right. You know, the shadow is more than just my unconscious. Your unconscious is made up of so many things. And so that's why Dave was saying if you go through the process of kind of unveiling some of these things, it is not for everybody. It's not. It is not for everybody. You have to be ready because you are peeling back layers. Especially if you are older, you are pulling back layers on top of layers.
Right. And the thing is also to that point, when you say you have to be ready to break that generational cycle because it's not easy.
It is not.
Because
nobody is encouraging people. There is a small community who is encouraging people to break cycles.
Right.
And on top of that, they're not even providing you on how to do it.
They're cheering you on, but will not help you.
Oh God, I'm like, whoa.
Any resources. What are some generational cycles that black people have that are positive?
Similar, and I was going to bring this up for you tonight. I understand that there's pressure of going to an HBCU and, you know, pledging, right? But I love the general cycle of getting an education. Yeah. I love that is normalized in your family and is expected and common that people go to school. You know, and I feel like those are the cycles that we need to create. Me and my dad talk about generational wealth a lot, which is something that many black families do not have. And I tell this all the time, but going to a PWI, literally people, and it's mainly, you know, white kids will talk about how they're going to redecorate their mom's home when they inherited their parents' home. I'm like, yo, many black people aspire to buy their parents' homes once they get on. Yeah. You know, it's kind of like we're working backwards. Right. You know, we're supposed to be inheriting and adding on. And inheriting and adding on. It's like we're providing for people who came before us. Right. And we get it. We have to make up from things that we couldn't control at one point. But to kind of crystallize what I'm saying is that to break these cycles, we need to affirm the link chains that are strong,
right,
that are helpful. But all while doing, and this is the plight of it, all while doing that, we got to destroy some of the ones that have put us at a disadvantage, along with the disadvantage that was given to us when we hit this nation.
Yes, that.
And please and understand that this is not a one-stop job, right? You gotta come in, sauce some off, take a break, come back and sauce some more off until we finally break it. Don't ever think that it's one clean break and it's not going to be. But I think we understand that the work needs to be done.
Yeah, the work needs to be done.
And that's the first part.
Right.